All right, let's add some walls to our scene. I'm eager to start adding some backdrop to this, and I want to show you a process about how to create some walls in Blender that's a lot of fun to do. If you are following along in the handout, I am skipping ahead to step 62 here, so don't let that throw you. But I want to talk about ways that we can add walls to our scene. Now, we know that our camera is just looking this direction right now, so we don't really need to worry about the walls that are closest to us on the two edges. But we are going to want to bring in some walls that kind of cap the view over here. And there's a million different ways that you can create walls. We could just grab our floor, click on this edge, extrude upward in the Z direction, and there's a wall. We could take a cube, scale the cube up so that it's as big as our whole scene, put the camera inside of the cube, and then reverse the normals, and then we're inside a room that's just the inside of our default cube. Or we could take a cube and stretch it to make it very long and very tall and skinny, and that'll be one wall, and we can make some duplicates of that, move it around, and kind of build, Lego style walls. Lots of different ways to do that. One of the really fun ways, though, I think, is really good for people who are new to 3D modeling, as I'm assuming you are because you're watching this tutorial, is to create walls and other kinds of objects using the images as plane option. That allows you to do, kind of design your wall in 2D, either something that you're doing in Photoshop, as I have done here, or even hand drawn. I've done that before where I've just sat down with a piece of paper and drawn an elevation of a wall and then scanned it and then brought it in and painted it in Photoshop or whatever. You can even paint it with watercolor if you wanted to. Because if you can take a picture of it or scan it and bring it in as some kind of image file, then you can bring it into Blender. Now, you do need to have turned on the images as plane function that I talked about way back in the very first video of this series, or even in the Blender Beach tutorial that preceded this. So if you didn't do that, go back and watch that video, or if you can follow along with go over to the edit menu, go to preferences, open that up, click on the add-on tabs and search for images as planes, import, export images as planes, and turn that on. Otherwise, this next step won't work for you. And also, if you're not in the class, then you're not going to have access to the exact file that I'm using right now, but you can do something similar with it. You can watch me go through this next step if you don't have this exact same file, and you can make something of your own that looks similar to this, or find an image online, or paint something, or do whatever to create an image as plane. So what I'm going to do first of all is make sure that I'm in object mode, because we don't want to be adding our wall to some other part of our scene. So make sure you're in object mode, hit the tab key of course. I'm also going to go over here and just hide our arches over here. I'm going to just get this out of the way. I want to see the rest of my scene here pretty much, but the arches take up a lot of real estate in the scene here. So I'm going to look at where our 3D cursor is. It's right here in the world origin. That's where our image as plane is going to appear. And I'm going to Shift A to add an image and an image as plane. And if you don't see this here, it means that you haven't turned on that add-on. So go do that, and then you can add an image to the scene. And I'm going to scroll down over here, and I'm just going to find my little wall image over here. And we can do some things over here that we're not going to do right now. I'll show you how to do them afterwards. But I'm going to just leave this here and say import images as planes, and there it is. But it's purple. Why is there a funny little purple wall here in the scene? Well, it's purple because we're in the solid view wall. Yours actually might not be purple. It's just the random color that Blender has assigned to that plane that the image is on. But the plane is imported as a material. We haven't dealt with materials yet in this series here, so we need to move over into one of these other ways of viewing the workspace. Either the material preview mode, which is what I want you to do, or you can move over into the actual rendered preview mode. So I'm going to have you click on that material preview mode. Remember, you can also click the Z key and get the, actually let me do that more in the center of the screen here. Well, I made it wireframe. The Z key and go down to material preview there so that we can actually see the material. Now if we zoom in here a little bit, we can see, oh, sure enough, there's this little kind of beams and stone wall thing here that I've put together. But we're going to scale this by jumping into it. Hit the tab key to jump into it. It's all selected, so just hit the S key and type in 10. We're going to make it 10 times bigger than it was. And don't forget to hit enter or return or click. Now, just to be convenient, let's go ahead and move it up in the Z direction right now so that we don't have to mess with that later. So I'm going to type in G and Z, grab and Z, and then type in 5 because that's half of 10. And we know that that's going to jump right up on top of the floor there. And then I'm going to hit enter or return or left mouse click. Any one of those will work. And if I click off of the surface of that, you can see, oh yeah, there's the color on this. I'm going to go ahead and hit the A key to select all of that. And I'm going to just look at just this wall here for a little bit. So I'm going to go over and hit the question mark button on my keyboard, or the slash key there. The slash key or the question mark there hides everything on your screen except the thing that you have selected, which is very handy. So you can bring it back just by hitting that again. So that's just like a little toggle switch that centers and hides everything in your scene. It's super useful when you're trying to work with stuff and things are getting in your way, or you just want to kind of focus on one thing. And that's what we want to do right now. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the 1 key on my full-size keyboard to move it here into the front view. You can use, of course, the compass rose here or the tilde key there. And yours actually might not be in the front view. Depending on how you set it up, you might also be looking at the right or left side view. So do whichever one gets you this view here. And let's take a look at it. I'm going to click on a blank spot to look at our image here. And right now it looks kind of ghostly. It looks like it looks pale and sort of transparent. And if I orbit around here a little bit, you can really see, yeah, I'm looking right through it, especially in the dark areas. It's not so bad in the lighter areas. So what's all that about? It also looks really shiny. Like, what's up? Why is this wall so shiny? Well, those are because those are things that are here by default. Now you can fix these things before you import them, like I talked about a moment ago when we were bringing it in. But we want to find the little beach ball here with the object selected. We want to click on the little beach ball, and we will see that it has a material applied to it automatically, and it's called wall image. That's the name of the JPEG image. That's this picture. When I saved it in Photoshop, I called it wall image, and that's the name that it is automatically named the material that it has applied on here. So the reason why it looks shiny, let's scroll down here a little bit. Our default principled BSDF shader right here has the specular and the roughness up to 50%. So if we pull those two down, you don't necessarily have to do both of them, but if we pull those two down, that's going to make the shininess go away. So we're not going to get that funny, like, why is the rough stone wall so shiny? And you might want to adjust those later on. So you may want a little bit of shininess, especially on the stones and maybe some of these areas that are kind of wet and mossy looking, But for now, just turn those off so we're not getting the glare off of that. Then we have to scroll down here, put the cursor in this view here and scroll down a little bit farther until you find this. It may be closed for you, the settings tab there. If you find the settings tab, pop that open. But you want to get down here to this little area, this blend mode. And the reason why we can see through it is by default, it's set the alpha channel to blend, meaning it's kind of merging both the color and the invisible parts. Remember, an alpha channel, if you're not familiar with that term, we have the red, blue, and the green channels that make up a color image. Well, an alpha channel is a fourth channel. It's just another layer of information where different programs can talk to each other about what parts you want to be transparent. So we could make like a fence or something that has like slats on it, and you could just set part of the image to be invisible so that it wasn't actually the geometry of boards with gaps between the two of them. It was just one single plane. But you had parts of it that were invisible. And there's times when you want to do that even in this process. Like we could have had a window in the scene right now. And if we had saved that as a PNG or a TIFF where that window was looking at an invisible layer, that would read as an alpha channel of don't put anything here.
Do you see? No. No.
Right now, all we want to do is fix this little issue here. So I'm going to come down here to where it says alpha blend and set it to opaque. So by setting it to opaque, just takes that transparency. So now it doesn't look like it's being painted on scrim or anything anymore. It's actually a solid object that we can't see through. So by setting those two things up here, now we can start chopping this up. And that's the great thing about images as planes. This is an actual piece of geometry. It's not just an image. It's a plane that has an image applied to it. So we can do anything we want to this. But what I want to do is pull some of these beams out here so that it looks like these beams are actually coming off of the wall. So if you remember how to do that, that's the same loop cut that we did when we added the trench to the floor. So I'm just going to select the side edge here because the loop cuts are going to be perpendicular to the edge that you selected. I am in the edge mode over here. You can hit the 2 key on your keyboard and get into the edge mode. And you remember the keyboard shortcut for that is to create a ring cut, right? The Control R, or Control or Command R will create a cut. So I'm just going to start off with just the one over here. I'm going to click and I'm just going to move straight up here until it's parallel with the underside of that big beam there at the top. I'll zoom in there and see, yeah, I did pretty good on that. Now, if I missed a little bit or I want to move things around, remember the GG command? GG is the command that we want to use because that's really going to be important right now, because if I just hit the G key, even if I hit G and Z to make sure I'm not accidentally pulling it away from the wall, well, look what it's doing to the material that's on there right now. It's stretching. It's actually stretching the shape there. That polygon at the top is getting bigger. It's not just moving along the plane. It's actually stretching that polygon. That's not what we want. It's also messing the texture up when we do that. So I'm going to undo there. And this time I'm going to say hit GG, and that's going to allow us to slide this up and down across the surface without changing it at all. So I can, if you didn't quite get it right and you want to adjust that around, hit the GG, and then we're going to click there again. Now I'm going to type the 3 key to enter the face mode, select this new face. I've now split it into the big face down over here and this little one over here. And now I can hit the E key and I can extrude off some dimensionality onto this. So now it looks like this beam has another, sort of an offset over there. It's got this little overhang. I'm going to pull out some of these other beams to make it look like they're supporting this beam. And that's one of the many ways in which you can change this image. So let's do that again. I'm going to do it, pause the video and do this really quickly, and I'll speed it up because you can do this on your own. But I want to show you how do we deal with this little diagonal over here. So in order to get to the diagonal, let's just add a couple more loop cuts here. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the 2, select this edge, and I'm going to say Control or Command R. And this time, what the heck, I'll just roll up my scroll wheel to get 2 cuts there. And I'm going to click, I'm going to pull one of them right there to the top of that middle beam. And then I'm going to deselect so I can come down here and GG this and slide this up to the underside of that beam over there. And then I can do the same thing in the other direction. I can go down and grab this one. Let me scooch up here a little bit. And I will do Control R and do 2. And I'll slide this over here to the big beam that's going up in that direction. And I'll deselect and I'll grab this one. Oh, but look what's happening now. We've been making all these like single lines going across. Now that I've clicked over here, I haven't actually got the whole thing. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's not, going to be a problem, but it does go up on the beam goes up all the way here. So in order to select this whole thing, I'm going to hold down the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac, and that's going to select the whole ring. So it's going to take the whole ring loop all the way across. And it's not really a loop here because we're just dealing with a plane, but basically it's all of the edges that are all in a line with that edge. So hitting the Alt or Option key before you click will select the whole loop. And now I can GG and slide this over here until it is right about over there. And now it's okay to grab just this one because I could scooch this one in a little bit here. Now I can type GG and I can push this one in here, and you can see it's like offsetting that edge there. That's okay. GG. And now I'm aligning that edge up with this narrower beam up on top. Okay. So now it's pretty easy to pull these other beams out, but what do we do with this diagonal one? So what I am going to do is actually extrude these first, because you can do a problem with this next step. You can run into a problem that I ran into the first time I was recording this tutorial, like, what is happening? Oh, and then I realized what it was. So I'm going to click over here on this button, on this face over here, and I want to go all the way down and collect this one. All right, easy. Hold the Shift key down, do this, right? Okay. Eventually, you're going to get into a position where you're really going to thank me that I showed you how to do this. I'm just going to click once over here, and instead of just holding the Shift key down, I'm going to hold Shift and Control or Shift and Command. And then when I click again, it's going to make a straight path and select everything in between those two. So right now, it would just save me one extra click over here. But if you had a whole row of these, you had 15 little faces, you have to hold the Shift key down, go click, 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 click. No, you can click on the first one and click on the last one when you hold down Shift and Control, and it'll select everything in between. And that can save you a great deal of time. So I'm going to scooch over here to the side here just so I can see how far I'm extruding. Hit the E key to extrude, and I'm just going to pull it out a little bit over there. That looks pretty good.
Oh, this is different.
I don't want to make it quite as far out as this big beam overhead. I want that to feel like it's hanging over a little bit. And then don't worry about the fact that we're smearing the texture along these new faces over here. That's inevitable. No way to avoid that, but it's easily fixed. And we'll do that in the next video. Now I can go over here and grab this face, and I'll do the same thing. I'll extrude that out a little bit. We'll worry about that other one up there later. Now I've got the parts that I need to cut out this diagonal. Now my loop selection cuts right now are only going sort of horizontal or vertical. I don't really have any way to make this cut, but I can if I use a different tool. So the knife tool over here is this little button that you can click on, but it's so easy to remember this keyboard shortcut because it's one of the basic single letter ones, K for knife.
That's a knife.
So I'm going to hit the K button there and get the knife tool. And you can see the icon has changed to like a little chef's knife with a little green dot on it. And what this is allowing you to do is kind of just cut out pieces of geometry. But the reason why I'm looking at it right now kind of underneath the beam here is it's really easy to click over here. If I click over here and then I tried to click over here on this edge, if I were looking at it from like above or straight on, I might not know whether I was clicking here or here. So if I try to cut the air between here and here, nothing's going to happen, and you're just going to get frustrated, or maybe you accidentally cut some part you're not aware of. So make sure you're cutting from this line. You're actually cutting on the surface. So I'm just going to click right about there, and I'm just going to extend this little magenta line over here until I go to this edge there, and I'm going to click there again. Now you have to hit the Enter key or Return key, or I think left mouse button will also work there. Now I've got a new face there. I've got this face and I've got this face, and if I'm in edge mode here, I can select that edge. We need to do that again, however, because we need to hit our K button here, and I need to go up to this top side here, come down over here, and come down over here, and I'm happy with where I put those cuts. If you don't like it, hit the escape key, and that just cancels it. So hit the K key to not cancel it, and I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to hit enter. And you can do a whole bunch of these. So really, I could come in here and say K, and I could go da 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 da. I mean, I could cut a round hole out, and if I go right back to where I started again, and then hit enter, I could just like delete that face and, punch a hole in my scene there. And you can see it's had to do some little supporting geometry to get that. So you can do all kinds of stuff. Or I could extrude this out. If you had some, whoops, hit the E key to extrude that out. There we go. Oh, and I got those edges as well. That's not what I want. But you can really chop up a surface with the knife key really effectively. Now this is making kind of a mess in terms of actually a good mesh with good topology and all that kind of stuff. But if all your goal is to make a cool looking image, then to heck with all that, just cut out what you want and pull things forward. You could even, if you wanted to, cut a few of these rocks out and pull a few of them forward to give the rocks a little bit of dimension. Have fun with it. All we need to do though is go back into the face mode. I'm going to click on this new face that I've now created over here and hit E to extrude. And I'm just going to pull that out right over there. And now we've got some geometry going on. So I'm just going to fast forward right now and finish the rest of these, and then you can do this on your own, or you can make the cuts that are appropriate to the image if you don't have access to this one. Okay, so what I did here was just add some loop cuts to pull out these faces and pull the beams out. Notice I didn't pull them all the way out, so it looks like this beam is bigger than the supporting beams, or really that these beams are kind of buried in the wall. I did run into one issue here where I needed to jump in and use the knife tool to cut this one out here. I think it's because I didn't cut this all the way across before I made these diagonal cuts in here. I think that kind of broke up the flow there. So I just used the knife tool to go from here to here. So if you run into that problem, you can just do that as well. Oh, and the other thing you can do is, you might have noticed if you were watching very closely to the fast forward, that I was able to select with the shift key held down all of these faces and extrude them all together. So they're exactly the same distance away from the wall because I just extruded them all at one time. You don't have to do each one of these individually. You can also do the shift R trick to repeat the last action. So if I wanted to extrude one to a specific height and then go over select another one and hit E and then shift R, it would extrude it to the same distance. So a lot of different ways to do that. And then afterwards, you can I'll do that trick I was talking about. I'll click on this face, hold down the shift and the control or command key and click on this face and see how it's selected all those together. Now I can even, in this case, I can actually move this one. I don't need to extrude this or anything because I'm only doing is pushing that back a little bit. I pulled that face out a little farther than I think I wanted to. Maybe something like that looks pretty good. But now we've got this really kind of fun dimensional object here. And if we go into the rendered view now, but now if I move the light around, I'll put it up into a position here where we can get some like really great shadows happening on there. Like I say, we'll fix all the smeary materials later on, but we've taken this 2D image and very quickly popped it out just by making some cuts into it and turned it into a 3D wall. And we could have spent a whole bunch of time modeling all of these beams and doing all this stuff, but we got to a place where we have a wall really quickly just by using the images as planes.